Hi everyone, George here with a little update regarding the Ukraine invasion, the war in Ukraine, or the special operations, if you may. Let me start off by saying that I'm greatly encouraged by the fact that the Ukraine has scored a tremendous amount of success in the fight against Putin's Russia. With that said, I'd like to let everybody know that there is information out there that seems to be very biased or biased to the extent that it's detrimental to everyone's credibility. And let me just point out a couple of sources of information that you really should be worried about. And those two pieces of information, or those two sources of information rather, that everybody needs to be a bit worried about come from these two individuals, Ben Hodges and David Petraeus. And these two individuals seem to underestimate Putin and Russia in general. For example, early in February, Ben Hodges said something to the effect on CNN that, and it was totally wrong, and I believe he admitted his mistake, that Putin miscalculated and that the war would be over in a course of 10 days. Now, to give credit where credit is due, there have been a lot of follies and really uh, stupid mistakes on the Russian part. And but just the same, until Putin and his team sit on a table and concede total defeat, nothing is yet over. And people that are more cautious are warning about this. And who are these folks? Well, the folks in particular are Lloyd Austin, Mark Miley, and Wesley Clark. Now, these folks, these three military gentlemen, have an accurate assessment of the war. They have a sober opinion of what is at stake here, and they also have a very realistic outlook as to how the war should proceed and how the struggle should proceed with respect to uh, coming to a peaceful um, resolution or a viable resolution without any further escalation. So do pay attention to their speeches when they talk. Alternative sources that you can rely on, for better or for worse, are Alex Christoforou from the Russians' perspective. And lately, Alex has been talking about how Putin might escalate the war, which worries me about. A more neutral source of information is Crux. And Crux seems to bring a more rounded perspective of everything, of the situation in Ukraine. Now, with my sources clearly explained, I'd like to address a couple of other questions that are floating out there. Can Europe survive its own sanctions? And my opinion on that is yes. Now, the Russian bloggers will have you believe something to the contrary, that this is total gloom and doom. They shot themselves in the foot. That's a whole lot of baloney. Uh, Europe has one of the most resilient economies in the world. It's a free market economy, so I'm pretty sure people will adopt to even the most stringent sanctions that Putin can throw at them. There is less corruption, and it's the whole economy there is filled with strong entrepreneurial spirits. They will find alternative sources of energy, and they will overcome this obstacle that Putin has thrown at them in terms of weaponizing energy. Um, so apart from that, they have excellent trading relationships with global partnerships, not only with Russia. Let's forget about Russia, but globally. Uh, I'm pretty sure eventually Canada will come to terms with the fact that they have to step up to in this game and be a source of being a source of an energy provider to the rest of Europe. And as well, the Europeans will have to diversify their sources of energy, not only in the fossil fuel industry, but also from a solar perspective. And with respect to solar energy and sources of solar energy, I think that source has been grossly overlooked, and it's high time that people explore that option, especially going off grid and not relying on heavy utility companies anymore. Can Ukraine win the war? Yes, as long as uh, Western resolve remains unwavered. They do continue to need weapon and technology resources, and I hope that that stream uh, continues to uh, continues to provide them with the resources that they need. Uh, it's paramount to the future suppression of aggression in Europe, and that's why the Ukraine needs a victory. Um, so far, Ukraine has gone a long way since its pre-war years. There seems to be less corruption than before the war. They're all united against this aggression, and it's essential that I'm going to reiterate this. It's essential that Ukraine uh, wins in order to give a strong message to Putin and the likes that aggression in Europe is not acceptable. Um, if they learn a lesson, then the likelihood of another conflict sparking in the heart of Europe will subside tremendously. Um, what's the status of Russia? Well, the status of Russia, as we've seen in more recent reports, there are certain entities in Russia that are calling for Putin's resignation. That is a positive signal. However, um, the West needs to overtly support this dissent to the point that Putin and his regime falls completely, and they're replaced by uh, a more moderate faction that wants closer ties to the West, that wants Russia to thrive like it was thriving before this calamity had happened. Um, there are a lot of folks that they saw the benefits of free market, a corruptionless system, a more democratic system, prior to Putin turning Russia into a dictatorship, one of his fiefdoms, if you will. Uh, those are the forces that we need to reach out in Russia to make things better. Um, so there, we know for a fact that its armed forces have been dealt a very severe blow. It's the economy has been dealt a severe blow as well. Its reputation suffered an enormous amount of defamation. Uh, the thing that scares me the most is that the likes of Putin may never concede defeat, and in that respect, they need a clear ultimatum: either concede defeat and come to the peace table, to the negotiating table by a certain date, or um, face face a Nuremberg like trial for war atrocities and war crimes. Um, here's where I am proposing uh, this suggestion, if you will. Uh, They need to opt for peace or face a Nuremberg trial for crimes against humanity. Already, the international community has amassed lots of evidence that the Russian forces committed crimes against humanity in Ukraine, and somebody has to be held accountable. Lavrov and Putin and perhaps Zakharova, they all need to face a trial, similar to the former dictator of Serbia. Dmitry Medvedev, we don't need to wait until the war ends to charge him with nuclear terrorism. He explicitly threatened the world with a nuclear war on more than one occasion. Completely unacceptable. And this man is living a private life. He's not a public official. Somebody should issue a warrant through Interpol and arrest this fellow. None of that is acceptable. And none of the Russian grievances with Ukraine justified a military operation to begin with. It was completely unfounded. Uh, they did not exhaust any peaceful options to bring the Ukraine to a peaceful settlement. They could have opted for sanctions, economic sanctions against Europe to begin with. They didn't have to wait for a war in order to turn off the Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2. They could have used that as a tool to attain their goals, but they didn't. They chose aggression, they chose war, they chose the military operation, call it what you will. A lot of innocent lives have been lost, and uh, I believe the sooner this calamity ends, um, the sooner we can restore peace and get to relieving the world about with the consequences of the pandemic. So that's my take on that so far. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions and comments, they're welcome. Keep everything respectful and within community guidelines. I'll be sure to read your comments. Thank you and take care.